Afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. Peter Racy here from Foundation Expo 88 YouTube, and where we're going to be taking the story during this interview is that if people look on the YouTube channel, they'll see that there's an edited down version of the Making of Gestation, and what I didn't properly detail during that was that there was a very critical time path that was missed. The boat left, the piece is still there, but luckily you were able to get fairly good cooperation from a national airline who are wonderful people. And so if you want to give us that particular story, and then what we might be able to do is talk a little bit about John Truscott, who just figures so prominently in a lot of these stories, and I think it's just his personality, his strength of character. I mean, he just brought brimstone and fire to the Expo display. But anyway, first of all, let's talk about Qantas.
Very good. So the little story about missing the boat was basically missing the boat. We were given all the artists from the States were asked to make on the West Coast were asked to make a certain shipment, container shipment out of Oakland, California. And I was having my gestation built up in Seattle, Washington. So there's a matter of transporting it down to Oakland. And the fabrication studio I was working with was a wonderful place, actually great craftsmen. However, they misjudged how involved this sculpture was, how much of it was. So we basically missed the boat timing to get it over to Australia, and time for the Expo, or time for the boat. Yep. And so I immediately started working with calling up Qantas Airlines, figuring they are an Australian airline, and they might have some affinity for making sure that the Expo did well and the Expo did well. And the first few people I talked to with Qantas, it was very, very foreign idea for them to take on something like this. And it took quite a bit of perseverance, right? If I was somebody who would just kind of sit back and go, well, it's not going to work, this sculpture would have never made it to Australia. But I basically took a little time with this and met a lot of nice people on the phone lines. And after about 2 weeks moving up the ladder at Qantas, I came to a gentleman that was able to have the authority to authorize this. And he did a wonderful, wonderful job about organizing the shipment of this, but it also came down to whether this large monumental sculpture would fit on a 747 jet cargo plane. And the only place it would be able to fit was through the nose, where there were nose cut open stuff. And it barely made it, just by centimeters, to get into that plane. So it was meant to be.
Yeah, no, it's
kind of see it as the birthing canal.
Another good analogy.
They brought gestation over, and then once I arrived in Australia and Brisbane before the shipment arrived. I guess the shipment arrived in Australia down in Sydney before I got there. But
okay.
We needed to get from Sydney up to Brisbane and go through all the channels that had to go through with the Tuscans and everything. And I was sitting in John Truscott's office literally a week before the opening of the Expo, and the sculpture still wasn't there. And we were both getting a little bit nervous about this, about trying to get it through customs. We were coming up with a new strategy how to do that, right when we saw the flatbed truck driving by with the sculpture on it and turning into the Expo grounds. So it was quite a nice sigh of relief that both John and I agreed in that moment.
And just on that point, I mean, there's also in the story there the fact that the location changed, didn't it? So it ended up being quite serendipity that, gestation, a gesture of peace and goodwill and fertility ended up being sort of in the midst of the Cold War, effectively, between Russia and America.
Yeah, that's true. And it was a children's play area that just wasn't able to make the final cut for construction for the Expo. So it was this beautiful, wonderful plaza that it turned into right next to the Russian exhibition hall. And I'm very, 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 very much involved with world politics, world peace, and I dedicated the sculpture when I was building it to birth, regeneration, and peace. And I thought it was a very appropriate setting for it to be sitting next to the Russian exhibit when we're talking about life, and other people are talking about obliterating the planet with nuclear weapons. So it was very nice. I think in some small way it might have helped bring that insanity to an end.
Well, so it was the last time that the USSR ever exhibited at an expo, believe it or not. And on a couple of the other YouTubes, there are fascinating little stories. Bob Milliken tells a very funny story about how the Russians were caught completely off guard by this Russian-speaking employee of Expo who let all these negotiations go on, and then led on right towards the end that he actually did speak Russian, and they weren't being so secret after all. Anyway, it's a funny little story. Just to press on, I think we might just terminate or cut off this particular interview. It's probably gone on for long enough, but we will come back and talk about John Truscott, because I'm really keen to hear your views about this wonderful man. And with that, we'll say good afternoon, and we'll be back with you in a second.